Hello, everyone. Welcome to Next Level Humanity. I have a dear guest here, Karl Alomar. Welcome, Karl.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah, happy to have you here. He's the managing partner at M13, which we will dive deeply afterwards. So, Karl, your journey starts with entrepreneurship, operations, then VC, and you are leading hypergrowth right now. What early experiences shaped you in your fascination on building and scaling companies and helping companies scale?
Yeah, I get what started me. So I was educated actually in London at Imperial College as an engineer. So I kind of came to the US market straight out of university and started working for a company as an engineer. Kind of moved more into business development and sales engineering type stuff. And I think maybe it was just youthful exuberance, but I just felt like a lot of the times I felt like I could make better decisions. And you just have this. I think as an entrepreneur, you have this sense that, there's so many ways that something can be done. Why aren't people innovating? Why aren't people doing things in novel ways? And after maybe 3 years of working in a different, someone else's company, a larger firm, I kind of came to a realization that I just wanted to go and innovate and create things that what I was thinking about that I thought could be good for environment, society, consumers. And that really encouraged me with an engineering background to go and just start building.
Yeah, and was there a moment when you realized you were wired differently? Maybe more, doing better in chaos, uncertainty, intensity, because that's what most entrepreneurs have. We
Yeah,
chaos and we like problems and
yeah. That never really bothered me. I think again in those early days before I started my own company. So I started my first company when I was 24, so I was very young. So like between the ages of 21 and 24, when I was a young graduate and I was just starting work, I always was pushing the envelope. So in whatever opportunities or things that I was involved with, I was kind of trying to push the envelope and trying to do things a little bit, more extreme. And then some of the more senior experienced managers were, trying to pull back. And I think the realization just came that, I felt like I could thrive if I held my own destiny my own. And I guess that was tested a little bit when I went to business school after my first company in Columbia, in New York. And in the middle summer, I went to work for the American Express Venture Capital team. You always do an internship in your middle summer. And again, I just got thrown into this massive bureaucracy. And although I felt in this youthful exuberance that there was so much I could do for these companies that they tasked me to work with, I was held back and not able to do anything. So just, it was a real realization to me that if I didn't have control of my own destiny, then I was always going to limit my potential. And that's the thing that really opened my eyes to constantly wanting to get back and build, something that I could have some level of control, some level of directional influence on.
yeah. I love what you say, being in control of our own destiny. It's I think what drives people to entrepreneurship and you
Yeah.
just want to lead and
You have to have an appetite for risk, though. I know a lot of people who are incredible operators, but they need the security of a large organization. They need the infrastructure. They need these things to make them feel calm and comfortable and able to execute. I live in a very different world. I have this sense where I feel like I can just dive into something I don't know and I'll learn as I go and I'll figure it out and I'll be quick enough and sharp enough, I hope, to make the right decisions along the way to get me there. And so I do think there's different types of mentality, and as you highlighted, I think for entrepreneurs there is a specific mindset, the way they think that puts them into, they thrive in these kind of volatile, risky environments.
Yeah. And do you think this is kind of like a personal question, but do you think it's characteristics or the way we grow up, or what do you think leads to being someone who is striving for taking risks and
I have
and
to
being
say,
in the middle of uncertainty? It's because it's kind of like it's either characteristics or built in you or learned.
I
You
want to
grow.
say, yeah, I want to say it's a combination, but I'm one of three, and I have two sisters, both very successful, one of which is absolutely a corporate operator, cannot operate in high-risk environments, but operates amazingly well in structured environments. I have another one that's in between that has actually, she's an architect, she started her own firm, and she's working in a risk environment, but in a very structured way, and kind of the level of risk she's taking is very different. And then there's me on the extreme of I'll dive into the riskiest environment with the greatest return potential and kind of fight my way there. All three of us grew up in the same environment with the same, kind of parenting and guidance. And so we landed in a different place. So I have to say there's a lot of nature in versus nurture in that I just always grew up with the mentality of wanting to do that, and I think that's probably a lot in my DNA. But again, I do think from a nurture standpoint, you either, and this kind of comes into bear when you talk about the role I play now, where I play as an advisor or a mentor or a board member for a lot of other founders. It's you can snuff out that if you have a child and they're developing and they have this adventurous nature, and you always stop them from exploring and experimenting, I think you can snuff that out. But I do think that if you're in the right environment and it allows you to grow and really experiment and really take risk, then it sets you up to have that mentality as you go into the business world.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm wondering, across your career, what has stayed consistent about the way you approach business, people, leadership? What has been consistently? What have you seen?
I've definitely learned and grown, and things have developed.
Yeah, sure.
I think the one thing that I'm very proud of that has not always, from a business standpoint, paid dividends, but I think from a moral standpoint has always made me feel very good about what I do, is I've always maintained a very strong ethical mindset towards how I do business and work with people. And that's been consistent from day one. I'd say a lot of other things have evolved and changed and matured, and we will go into those. But just the idea that I'm making the right decisions and I can live with my decisions, and that I treat the people around me well, and that I thrive on the success of the people around me. That's something I've had from day one, and it has probably limited in some cases, potential financial gains. But at the end of the day, I'm very comfortable financially, and I have no ethical or moral boundaries that I feel that I've crossed to get there. So I feel like I made the right decisions along my journey, and it makes me feel very good about where I am.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Just having the comfort of sleeping calmly and knowing you just did the right thing. Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah. And what were the personal values that guided you with that before DigitalOcean, 13, even before your reputation? What have been your personal values around that?
Yeah, I just was always of the mindset that, if you handle yourself in the correct way. I always had this, I guess, just thinking about it now in retrospect, this long-term vision that, when I was in my 20s, making decisions that were not the most economically beneficial, but the right ethical decisions, I always had the mindset that people, the most valuable thing anybody can have is their standing in the world and their reputation, and how people can trust them and work with them. And when you work in a ethical, moral way, you surround yourself with ethical, moral people. And when you work in a unethical, more deviant approach towards business, you tend to surround yourself with more deviant people. And what I have seen with other people is when they make those wrong decisions, the people that gravitate to them are the people that will also make similar decisions and will also take advantage of them when the opportunity arises. So I've had the opportunity where I've done right by people, and years later it's paid back dividends because those people are available, want to work with me, want to help me, want to support me. And over a 30-year career, I've been able to really rely on my network, really rely on my relationships, really rely on my reputation to go a pretty long way. And so I think that's really what drives that thinking. It's kind of like, how does my action today affect me 5, 10, 20 years from now? And am I doing the right thing that's going to give me, a solid career path and solid sets of relationships that I can lean on?
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, that's absolutely beautiful. And a big lesson, I think, for all entrepreneurs and investors, anyone in the business world, you're like standing on a big lesson.
Yeah, I see it in the role that I play now as an investor. Investment community is a small community. Everybody talks, everybody knows each other. And when an entrepreneur acts unethically or takes advantage of a situation that they shouldn't, that, it doesn't end there. These entrepreneurs are young, they have decades of career ahead of them, and they're just cutting off a whole segment of opportunity because they're going to carry that reputation into future businesses, into future opportunities, and they'll always have to answer for that. No matter what happens, they'll always have to answer for that.
Yeah, your reputation is the most important thing, but I think before even that reputation, your values and who you are personally and what you're standing for is even more important, because that gives birth to your
Those
reputation.
are the ingredients to your reputation.
Yeah. At DigitalOcean, you helped scale the company into one of the most beloved developer platforms globally. So what did that experience teach you about true nature of growth, true nature of entrepreneurship, building companies, and,
So that way,
any lessons we could talk about to just, lighten up the path to any entrepreneur,
for sure.
Young entrepreneurs listening to us right now?
Yeah, that was my third business that I was able to build and ultimately exit. The first two were much more business to business oriented. Customer sets were much more businesses. I would say DigitalOcean brought me closest to the customer, closest to the developer. And so, whereas, there are different types of companies that target different sizes of audience. When you deal with a B2B business that's doing enterprise deals, they may have they may have 100, 1,000, or maybe 5,000 customers. You deal with DigitalOcean, you're talking hundreds of thousands. You're talking about a massive community, and there's a very different relationship you have with that. But I'd say the thing that really, really was evident and clear, and I think this is true for B2B as well, but what I really learned from DigitalOcean was how important the customer was and how the customer experience stepped up above everything else. And so, in the early days of DigitalOcean, you imagine we're competing against Amazon Web Services. They were obviously younger than they are now, but they were still multi-billion-dollar platform. And somehow we had to kind of compete head-to-head with them. And the way that we were able to do that is we created an experience that was much more focused and oriented around the customer. And that's what created the love, and that kind of truth to them was what felt, they could engage with. And I think we were the first to do it. I think others have done it in cloud infrastructure and in developer environment in general since then. But we were one of the early, businesses that really focused on that developer community and created that relationship with the developer.
Yeah, and when building operational frameworks from scratch, which you did, what has been your philosophy? Like structure first, people first, or learning first?
So if you go learning first, I think it takes too long. And in the world we live in, things move so quickly, you have to learn as you go. So you can't just sit back and try and study. And so you have to, you lean on advisors, you lean on people who have done it before. But the way that I've generally thought about it is you do need some kind of modest structure, but ultimately within that modest structure, you need to put the right people in place. And what I've done historically is build a kind of beta initial structure for a particular function. DigitalOcean, I built multiple different functions in the organization. And I'd build the structure, I'd start running it, I'd understand and learn about it and bring in really, really capable kind of specialist that knows that to help kind of in the VP role. And then that person would then help develop that structure, evolve that structure. And the one thing I think around entrepreneurship is you got to recognize everything is always evolving, everything is always, developing, and you're constantly on constant improvement, iterating towards improvement constantly. And so you can never get stuck in a particular way. And as you bring other people to the table, you have to lean on their experience and their knowledge to help evolve and develop the structures. So I'd say you start with a modest structure, put the right people in the seats, then have them develop the structure. And through that whole period, you're learning, but the people you bring in are also educated and experienced in those particular categories, so you already get the advantage of that.
And in my journey, in my own experience, I think finding the right people takes a different level of talent. It's like, I think it's another talent people have. Finding the right people, getting the right people on board, that's huge. And I think that's what most entrepreneurs call as luck. But I think it's just being talented in, knowing who you want and knowing, what kind of people you can work with and what's the right people for the company. Because you can have many experts, but which of those experts are the right people for the company? It's something different.
Yeah.
And how have you been with that? What has been your strategy in that? What has been your strategy?
At the end of the day, I think it's a lot of muscle memory.
Yeah.
through experience, everyone makes bad hires from time to time, and you over the years learn more and more about what makes someone good for you and what makes someone able to work with you. I think it's probably slightly different for everybody, but you build muscle memory and you basically have to ultimately trust your gut. So at the end of the day, what is really interesting is what I found is as a company evolves and you raise each round one by one, a whole new set of talent opens up to you. So you do your seed, you have a certain set of like early startup talent. You do your A, suddenly you see, oh my God, all these people, interesting people suddenly showed up. Now I can build an amazing team. Then you do your B or your C, and you're like, wait a minute, all the people I had in the A, that's nothing compared to now what I'm seeing. And so you just get these layers of talent that open up to you as you go raise round by round. And then it's also difficult to understand, am I hiring for now or am I hiring forever? So often when you hire in the very early stages, these are people that will thrive in those more unstructured, more ad hoc work environments. But then as you start getting to Series B, you've got 200-300 employees, you've raised $50-100 million, things are changing.
You lose most of them.
Now
Yeah.
you need people who can work more in structure. I've always said there's two types of people. There's specialists and athletes. Athletes are the ones that can do a little bit of everything. They're very good at the early stages, but they're not the absolute best at any one thing. But they can stretch and they can do a lot, and they're very, very useful in the early stages. And then specialists are people that are incredibly good at one thing, but if you suddenly give them a wider set of tasks, they're going to fail. Their core capability is that one thing, but they are the best at it. And so as you develop your team and as you mature your business, you're going to start with more athletes, you're going to evolve to more specialists, but then you have to recognize, are there athletes that can grow with the business, or do they actually top out? And you have to start thinking about, change management as you grow the organization. So there's a lot of complexity to how you go through that, but a lot of it comes from muscle memory, from just experience.
Yeah.
This is where I think it's really, really valuable for young first-time entrepreneurs to have great investors or great advisors that can kind of help you navigate through how to think about those things. Because if it's the first time, you're never going to get it perfectly right. You do need help in that.
Yeah, you just don't have the muscle memory, as you say. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. And what patterns have you observed in companies that scale successfully versus those who collapse under their own ambition, who get stuck?
There's a lot of external, there's two reasons to fail. One, you're building a bad business, and secondly, there's external environmental issues that you can't control. And that's kind of where sometimes luck comes in. I've been through, I had a company during the dot-com bubble in 2000. I had a fintech company during the financial crisis in 2008. So I had to navigate those external forces, and luckily in both cases I was able to get through and ultimately exit those businesses. But those are things you can't always control. I mean, most recently the prop tech world, a lot of prop tech companies have had a real struggle in the last 3 to 5 years because mortgage rates went up so high, it just changed the whole environment on them, and it's not something they could have predicted. So I think the main thing, first of all, when it's external environments, the main characteristic is the ability to be calm and to make kind of logical, unemotional decisions through your journey to try and navigate through those problems. If it's a bad business fundamentally, then really, there are great operators that build businesses that aren't great, but then they modify and change the structure of the business. If the business economics are bad, or if the product market fit isn't there, or if something isn't there, you have to figure out how to pivot and how to actually manage and adjust. And I've seen some really great companies that started off honestly not that exciting, but then had to make the appropriate adjustments and ended up becoming incredibly exciting, successful businesses. And I've seen others that started looking super white hot, but because they didn't make the right decision, they didn't evolve the right way, at a certain point they just flatlined and they couldn't grow anymore because just either the product wasn't right for more scale or the business model didn't work for more scale. So there's two things I'd say to summarize all that. One, being calm, being able to make unemotional decisions, being able to go through stress in a very, in a comfortable way without knee-jerk reactions. And the other is being able to see through the noise and understand what the core, pulse of an organization is, of a company is, and how to actually evolve that to turn it into a formula that actually works. So some people just have this really innate ability to understand how to evolve a business to get it to a place where it's actually going to start functioning effectively.
Yeah. And I think both things you said are just basic executive skills, not
Yes.
deciding emotionally and having
Yes.
a clear
And
vision
some of them
and
are
yeah,
natural.
having executive skills. Yeah.
Yeah, that not all of them. I see executives that cannot handle high volatility, high risk environments, and
Yeah.
I see executives that don't have the ability to really understand how to evolve a business model. They're just good at executing, but they don't
Yeah.
know. They can't really see
Yeah.
through
Yeah.
the noise. So I do think it's a special skill, a special capability that should live within the entrepreneur that allows an organization to handle those variables. Not everybody has that. And it doesn't
Yeah.
necessarily come from
Exactly.
experience. It's something you evolve with experience, but it's something that is somewhat inherent in the individual.
Yeah. And would you say entrepreneurship needs kind of like strong will, clarity, and kind of like a stronger mindset? Because to cut through
Definitely,
the noise and to be,
yeah,
to act, because especially in fast-growing companies and scaling companies like startups, you have to act fast, decide fast, try, fail, keep on going, and have a clear vision. So it's kind of like this non-stop, stressful, and highly like the entrepreneur and the founders are responsible for everything that's going on in the
yeah,
company. So it's not only high risk, but it's also high level of responsibility where it doesn't happen in the enterprises. But it's kind of like not a one-man show, but the founder's show.
yeah, absolutely.
Would you agree with me? Like it needs a strong will and strong mindset and
Absolutely. I mean, you can't.
yeah,
You're going to battle. You need to go to battle with people who
yeah,
have strong mindset, strong will. I would say one more thing though is you need people that are decisive. You need people that
yeah,
are willing to make difficult decisions in tough moments and stick to them and fight for them. I see
yeah,
a lot of people when they get rattled, unable to make decisions, and then companies just spin because you can't move them. And so,
yeah.
along with that strong will, it's the ability to have conviction in your decisions. And even if they're not going to work, you see them through. If they're not working, you pivot and you make different decisions. But you have to be able to make real decisions in real time.
Yeah, and it's a huge responsibility. So I think the reason why some of the founders are finding it hard to make decisions is because they don't want to be face to face with they don't want to take the responsibility of their decisions. What
Yeah,
else? And what if?
they're not. I think they're just not confident enough in their own decision making, and so
Yeah,
they're worried to make the wrong decision. So rather than making any decision, they just sit on the
yeah,
question. And the problem is that's the worst thing you can do because then the business just slowly dies. It's better to make a wrong decision, figure it out, and correct it, than to make no decision.
to make no decision. Yeah, yeah, yeah. This is also a great lesson for any entrepreneur who's listening to us right now. And a question for you personally: how do you make decisions during those moments when stakes are highest and the pressure is greatest? Like, what's your strategy in deciding fast and deciding and taking decisions, and what's the
Yeah.
formula?
So it's interesting because I agree. Deciding quickly, making quick decisions, taking decisive positions is important. But one thing that I think you have to do is you have to take a breath. You can't react from the first news. You can't just see something and immediately react because the first point of view on something is not always the correct point of view. So what I generally try and do is if something hits me, I'll take a breath and I'll make a point of trying to collect the information. So first step, make sure you gather all the information you can. Information is king. Information is the most important thing that's going to feed how you make decisions or how you develop a business. Once you feel like you have a full set of information, you're now calm, you had your time, you've been able to process, then you can be very, very decisive. And I'm not talking about, waiting a month. This has to happen very, very efficiently and quickly. Like,
Yeah,
it depends on the time frame of the issue you're dealing with, but you just have to be able to understand what's happening very clearly before you can, turn the ship and kind of point it in a
yeah,
different direction.
yeah.
So that's
So what you're saying is step back,
step
just
back.
just
Don't
step back
react
and get
emotionally.
out. Yeah,
If ever you feel like you're making a decision as a knee-jerk reaction, stop yourself, step back, take a breath, and then come back to the problem and assess it with a clear mind. Don't let emotion get in the way of making a good decision.
and that emotion might also be excitement.
As much as, yeah,
Being
absolutely.
because I see founders getting high on
Yeah.
ideas and
And you'll see
concepts
a
and
red herring, a false flag, and you'll get super
yeah,
excited about it. You'll chase
yeah,
it, and then you look back 3 months later and you say, that
yeah,
just sent us down a really bad path.
yeah,
And so, yeah, clarity, vision, and both risk and opportunity at the same time.
yeah, yeah. So at 13, and you are at, I'm 13 right now, that's where you are at in your stage, in your
Yeah.
business journey. You now guide other founders with your experience, with your expertise, and instead of being an operator, you help them growing their companies, scaling their companies. So the question is, what called you to this shift from building your own companies to enabling others? And this is a classic question for, I think,
Yeah.
any entrepreneur who then decides to, okay, I have enough experience now, and now I can, help other founders. But also, like, the appetite is there, but
Yeah.
then one day you're like, okay, I've had enough and I want to help others do the same thing. So how
Well,
did that happen?
I've always dabbled in investing, sitting on other people's boards, advising other founders. I've always dabbled in that, and I've always really, really enjoyed that. I really have loved that. I'm a multitasker at nature, so I've always liked to have multiple problems around me that I can try and move from one to the other and move quickly amongst them. And so I think DigitalOcean. I had a lot of success in my life, and each stage of that success kind of gave me more financial freedom. DigitalOcean really gave me the ultimate financial freedom. And so at the tail end of DigitalOcean, where I was planning to make a move or thinking about other opportunities, I was obviously getting inundated with a lot of recruiters, people trying to get me to go be an operational leader, CEO or COO at another company, or I had a handful of people talking to me about potentially joining their funds and kind of becoming an investing partner in different funds. My first decision was, do I want to go back to operating or do I want to start investing? And I think with the financial freedom I had, it gave me the freedom to be able to say, I didn't need to do it for the economics. I didn't need to go get some big individual company win. I felt like I was in I was very excited about the idea of working, having my head up and seeing the horizon and working with a multitude of different founders on a multitude of different problems. So it's just always been something that's been really interesting for me. One thing to note is when you're running a company, a startup, you are so focused and so head down in that business that often you lose sight of what's happening in the world around you. So each company I was there from anywhere from 4 to 6 years. So in that 4 to 6 year period, you imagine how much technology has evolved, how much the market's evolved. And so at the end, you look up and you're like, oh my God, so much has happened. And I've missed, not all of it, but I've missed a bunch of it. Missed all the things that are not directly related to the business that I was running. And so getting into investing gives you the opportunity to always always have your head up and always be looking at the horizon, seeing what's happening, seeing the opportunities evolving much more quickly with the market. And you get the opportunity to have a selection of really great young entrepreneurs that just are super inspiring, that you can be a part of their journey. So that was always really, really interesting to me. I felt like I had achieved everything I needed to achieve in the operating side of things. Another kind of mindset I have is that every company I started, every company I was involved in, I wanted it to be more successful than the previous one. That was kind of like my personal challenge. And so DigitalOcean was incredibly successful. So then, if I wanted to then go find something else that was going to be even bigger than DigitalOcean, it was going to take me a while to really get to a place where I found that. And so I felt like I'd taken a company IPO, I'd achieved the pinnacle of what I wanted to do from the operating side, and now is an opportunity to start investing. And then the final little anecdote on that is, I started 3 companies, or I started 2 and then joined the founders of DigitalOcean for the third. But in each of the 3, my first desk was in a closet. So it was always like in someone else's office, I was in some closet, I was working away in that desk. First one was when I was 24. Second one, I was around 30, and then, obviously DigitalOcean, I started there when I was, I think, just turning 40, like 39 or 40. And so I was now, in my late 40s, and I was thinking, well, am I going to go back into someone's closet and start start the next thing? I kind of felt like I'd surpassed that stage of my career, so it was just an anecdotal thing that I find. But yeah, so then from an investing standpoint, then it was just a question of, what type of firm do I want to join? And I had the opportunity to join small firms in, leadership position where I had a lot of autonomy and ability to kind of drive my destiny, as I said before. And I had a couple of options to join larger firms where I'd be more junior partner and have to grow and learn over time and I'd had less control of my destiny. M13 was the perfect blend between the two. It was a smaller firm going into a second fund, but the ambitions were much, much greater. And the vision that my partners, Carter and Courtney, had were very aligned with mine. They were entrepreneurs originally as well, and we had this like vision of how do we disrupt the category? How do we come in and do things the way that, you know, founders want, but they're not getting from the industry today. And that's really the stemming of what made this really exciting. So I felt like we're building a startup in a venture world and getting the benefit of both the operational startup build as well as the venture opportunity of actually investing in and working with multiple founders and seeing this horizon.
And I'm sure you have heard of this question multiple times, but how do you decide? How do you decide on which founders to support and what qualities do you look for? What are the signals of, founders? What are the signals for success, resilience, clarity, long-term vision, or what do you look for?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing to note is if I'm investing in a founder, I'm investing in a minimum 5 to 10 year relationship with them. So you have to like them, if not love them. Like you have to really feel like this is someone you want to spend time with, you want to work with. So that's the first thing is like, am I, culturally aligned with this individual? Do I like the way that they present themselves and stuff? Then you have to really just believe in their potential. And so all the things we've talked about, but as on top of like being decisive, being, able to handle volatility and risk, willing to run through walls to solve problems, like that's all the table stakes. But then also, can they deliver a vision? Do they have a great vision? Do they, what do they aspire to be? What are they, trying to build? And again, like with everything else, it's muscle memory. You'll make a couple of bad investments and you begin to realize, there are some red flags that we should look out for. Too much hubris is a red flag. Being unrealistic or not really knowing your market well enough is a red flag. There's a number of different red flags that you also look out for. But ultimately, as you meet people, just if you meet someone, at a conference or in a dinner party or whatever, and you're just inspired by them, that's step one. It's just like, does this person inspire me? Will they be able to inspire other people? So what makes them, give them the highest likelihood of success? One is, are they going to be able to raise money? So they need to be able to inspire investors. Secondly, are they going to be able to hire the best people? They need to be able to inspire their team. And thirdly, can they drive like an organization with a unified vision and a clear mandate and excitement and energy? And if they can do those things, that begins to give them the right to be successful. And then a lot of details in their ability to make decisions, their ability to establish business models, their ability to navigate the complexities of an operation, like those come, in the mix as well.
Yeah. And what still is misunderstood, especially in the startup ecosystem? What do you believe the startup ecosystem still misunderstands about what they actually need, the founders actually need?
Yeah, from the perspective of the founder or from the perspective of the investor?
Founder.
From the perspective of the founder, I think the most important thing is that founders need to recognize that they don't know everything. Most founders have a certain sense of arrogance and confidence, which is great. I had it. It's fantastic. But you have to recognize that you will make a lot of mistakes, and not because you're, not intelligent or, it's just a matter of not having seen it before. And so the founders that really leverage the network of people can really kind of bring in mentors and bring in really intelligent people around them to help them navigate these challenges. I think that is an incredible and relatively unique skill set. So one of my earliest investments at M13 just exited for just under $1 billion a couple of months ago. And the founder is one of my favorite founders. And he was so talented and so skilled, but he had incredible humility. And anytime he spoke to anybody that had done incredible things in their career, he made them feel as though they were his teacher, and he gave them respect, and he never acted like he knew more, and he would debate his position, his point. He had his very clear points of view, but just his ability to, show humility in an environment where he's having incredible success and give respect to the people that came before him, just an incredibly endearing and incredible talent. And as a result, he was inundated with investment opportunity. Everybody wanted to invest in him. And ultimately, he got the best talent working for him. And ultimately, he sold to one of the best companies in his category. $60 billion company acquired them. So all of it really came from this personality and his ability to kind of just be a honeypot for just all these incredible people that wanted to come around him and be around him.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, having the ability to stay humble and just yeah. And how about
I think one of the key things, I mean, I'm in the later stages of my career at this point, but just recognizing that you're always learning. I'll never be in a position where I'll say I know everything. That's just anybody that thinks they know everything is already setting themselves up for failure. And so
it's impossible actually. So
yeah. And sometimes, you get people that had such incredible success that they just inevitably think that way. And you know what? They'll get through and they'll be fine and there's no problem for them. But I feel as though the higher likelihood of success is going to be the people that understand that learning forever is going to be the best thing that they can do to continue to evolve and develop themselves.
Yeah. And we can even learn from people who know less. Even if they're not experts, we can still learn.
Yeah.
We are learning. We are learning about life from our children.
Yeah, true. Very true.
So, yeah. And how about from the point of view of investors? So what do you believe? From the point of view of
investors, I think that this is the kind of the characteristic that we were trying to break when I jumped into M13 was that, investors' support is not as clear as it should be. So, when I was at DigitalOcean, we had some of the top investors. I've had great investors in my previous companies. But what I generally found was the general nature of the investment community historically has always been very reactive. They'll wait for a problem to arise or wait for something to happen, and then when it escalates to the level of the board, that's where the board reacts. And usually it's, you're not ahead of the problem, you're behind the problem, and it's just not as productive as an effective. And I think kind of if you turn on its head what I said about the founder, the investors need to recognize that what founders truly need is they need that support mechanism. They need that expertise, they need that guidance, and they need to leverage your experience. And that's why I really believe in operator investors. I think there are some great capital investors as well, but operator investors are a unique breed because they're able to really empathize with exactly what's going on the ground, and it allows them to, I think, be incredibly effective understanding whether future problems, seeing around corners, future problems, future growth pains might come from, and also where opportunities might arise that founders are not seeing because they just haven't seen them before. And so I just think that proactive mindset, which is kind of what we built M13 around, of saying, let's get ahead of the problem, let's actually be a partner to the founder and get ahead of the development and the growth and the scale that this business is going to see so that they are well prepared to handle what's coming in front of them. And we build a whole machine around that, and that's really how we operate, how we work with our founders.
Yeah, great. And what impact do you hope to leave on the next generation of entrepreneurs as a mentor, as an investor?
Absolutely, as a mentor. I think the investment is just a tool. I think it's more about, I would love to have, this one exit that just happened a couple of months ago is a great example of this. I would love to have, in my retirement years, a whole slew of incredibly successful entrepreneurs that can all say that I helped them get off the ground and build their careers, and just seeing, it's like seeing your children all kind of graduate, Ivy League schools. It's just seeing them achieve those goals. There's obviously a financial reward behind it for me and for M13, but that's not really the purpose. The purpose is to just change the world with great leaders that can bring really great businesses to market.
And you're above average successful individual, and you have lived entrepreneur, and you have lived through multiple exits, hyper growth, intense cycles. What belief about success have you outgrown over time in these 30 years?
I remember when I was 10 years old or something, I would say to my mother, hey, I'm going to be worth this much money by the time I'm 21, or this much money by the time I'm 30, and I'm just going to, I had all these ambitions to be this incredibly successful, and I was going to take care of my mother, and that was my whole thing with my mother when I was 10 years old. I think the key thing is you can't control the environment around you. So you could have an amazing business and just hit, I had a fintech business and the world fell apart. It's there's just nothing you can do. You have to navigate through that. There's nothing you can do to address that. So you have to always recognize that, and you can call it bad luck, but good and bad luck is all just part of the journey. And so, it's not always the most talented people that have the most success. Sometimes it's just the people being in the right place at the right time. But I will say that the biggest thing I learned is that success is not easy. You have to work it. You can't just sit back and say, oh, I'm going to do X and I'm going to be worth why. You have to really, really work at it. And I don't know any story of success just being 100% up and to the right. I'm sure there probably are, but in every story, you look at the Airbnbs of the world, or you look at some of these different environments of the world, and there's always going to be periods of time where they're having real struggles and they have to navigate and come back out of the troughs. Everything in life ebbs and flows, and so it takes work and it takes resilience and it takes the ability to fight through challenges and get there. And so that's the key thing, is never expect it to be easy. I think that's the biggest step.
And I believe failure is part of success. So it's inevitable. You fail in some businesses, you fail in some investments, and you gain in others. So it's kind of like there's this balance in life. So my next question is, what has failure taught you that success never could?
So failure has taught me always to have the right people around you. So I went through, in my first company, the bubble crash, and second company, the financial crisis. The reason the bubble crash I had a harder time navigating through because I really felt like I was on an island. I did not have the right advisors around me. I did not have the right team around me. We navigated through and ultimately sold the company and got an exit out of it. But it was a really, really challenging time. We had to cut the company down in half, and I really took all the weight on my own shoulders. It was very stressful and very difficult time. But we got through and we made it, and we kind of got out the other side. So what I really learned from that was make sure you have the right people around you. And so with the fintech company, China Export Finance, we built the most incredible board and had the most incredible team. And when we went through the financial crisis, I was not sitting by myself trying to deal with AIG's potential failure or half the banks that we were working with, getting out of lending, or I had, the ex-head of HSBC Asia, the ex-head of Fitch Ratings, these incredible people that were just right there, right on my shoulder, supporting me, always one phone call away, always wanting to kind of make phone calls and do things to try and navigate the financial kind of tightness and challenges. And again, as a result, we came out of 2008. I think we were doing like 87 million in revenue in 2008. In 2009, we grew to about 137 million in revenue. So even in that drought, we were able to grow by 60, 70%. And then ultimately we were able to exit in early 2010. And that would never have happened if I didn't have that infrastructure of people. And that extends also to the team. And so as we go to DigitalOcean, again, it's like, who are the people around you? Who are the advisors? One thing I say to a lot of founders is, don't always make the purely capitalistic decision on who you're raising from or how much you're raising. Often you're going to have far more success taking not the best financial deal on the table. Obviously, you don't want a completely bad deal, but something that maybe isn't the absolute best financial deal, but has the most incredible people. And if you put those people around you, they're going to be much more of a support mechanism for your success in the long term.
Yeah, and the entrepreneurs will need those buffers. It's kind of like those support in their journey. I fully agree. And how do you personally stay grounded while operating in this fast-growing, high-risk environment? What's your personal strategy?
At this stage in my career,
rather than breathing, other than take a breath?
At this stage in my career, it's family. I have that's my escape. So I have the ability to really balance and find peace in my time with my family. I have 2 young daughters, and it was harder to find balance, in the operating days. But as an investor, it's easier to find balance and spend time and really be able to take your mind completely off of the stresses of life when you're watching your daughter play in a soccer tournament, or where you're watching your other daughter do a dance recital, or like, these are the things that I think really what we live for. And so to me, that separation and that ability to compartmentalize allows me to, stay very, very kind of grounded and comfortable, and understand what the real, what real life is, not just what this imagination of business life is.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you. I had such a wonderful time. I didn't realize it's been around an hour, and we are. I had such a nice time. Thank you. I learned a lot, and I'm sure anyone listening, watching us learned a lot. My last question will be, if you could whisper one message to every founder in the world with your experience, what would that be?
I'd say relax, stay calm, make good decisions.
Relax, stay calm, make good decisions. Yeah, lovely. I love it. Thank you, Karl. It's been a pleasure speaking
Thank you so much.
with you. Yeah,
It's been great.
lovely.
I appreciate it.
Thanks to everyone who's listening to us, watching us on YouTube, and I will see you in the next episode. Bye for now.